My brother is sick, I came instead. I told my blind date. And she said, best date I've ever had. The rain had already soaked my jacket before I even reached the cafe. But it wasn't the weather that made my hands shake. It was the guilt. My younger brother lay in a hospital bed only a few miles away, fighting a serious infection that had stolen his strength in just a few days. Hours earlier, he had smiled through his pain and insisted that I keep the blind date he had arranged for himself months before. He claimed he didn't want a kind stranger waiting alone because of him. I thought it was the strangest request I'd ever heard. Yet there I was, standing outside a warm little cafe, carrying the weight of someone else's hopes. I wondered how anyone could possibly understand the truth without walking away disappointed. When I finally stepped inside, I found her sitting by the window with a book resting beside a cup of untouched coffee. She looked up with a smile that seemed patient rather than impatient. I walked over, took a deep breath, and admitted the truth before anything else could happen. My brother was sick, and I had come instead because he refused to let her be left alone after she had traveled across the city to meet him. I expected confusion, maybe even anger. Instead, her eyes softened with quiet understanding, and she smiled in a way that immediately lifted the burden from my shoulders. She told me it was already the best date she had ever had because honesty had arrived before introductions. The evening became something I never expected. We talked about ordinary things that somehow felt extraordinary. We spoke about childhood dreams, favorite books, embarrassing memories, and the people who shaped our lives. Every time the conversation slowed, it found another path naturally, as though we had been friends for years instead of strangers meeting by accident. She confessed that she had almost canceled because she had lost faith in dating after too many disappointments. I admitted that my own life had revolved around caring for my younger brother since our parents passed away several years earlier. Responsibility had quietly replaced ambition, and somewhere along the way I had forgotten what it felt like to simply enjoy another person's company. As the night continued, she surprised me again by asking if we could stop by the hospital before going home. She wanted to meet the man whose kindness had sent his own brother to honor a promise instead of breaking it. I hesitated because hospitals are not places people usually visit after dinner, but she insisted gently. When we arrived, my brother was awake. His face lit up with laughter the moment he realized what had happened. Even surrounded by machines and medicine, he managed to joke that I looked more nervous than any groom on his wedding day. The three of us spent nearly an hour talking. The hospital room echoed with laughter that nurses probably hadn't heard there in days. For a little while, illness lost its grip on the atmosphere. Watching my brother smile reminded me that hope often arrives disguised as ordinary moments. Before leaving, she quietly placed a small handmade bookmark on the table beside his bed. She had drawn a sunrise across it with the words, "Every morning is another chance to begin again." My brother held it as though it were something priceless. Days turned into weeks, and those weeks became filled with unexpected visits. She never came empty-handed. Sometimes she brought homemade soup, sometimes books, sometimes nothing more than her smile. She never acted like a hero. She simply showed up. The doctors often said that emotional support can help recovery almost as much as medicine, and watching my brother slowly regain his strength made those words feel true. He laughed more. He complained more. He even argued about television shows again. Those tiny signs of normal life became victories worth celebrating. During that time, I realized something about love that no movie had ever taught me. Love isn't always fireworks or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it is choosing to remain beside someone when life becomes inconvenient. Sometimes it is waiting in hospital hallways, sharing silent cups of coffee, or holding someone's hand while hoping tomorrow brings better news. She taught me that real affection grows through consistency rather than perfection. When my brother was finally discharged, the first place he wanted to visit wasn't home. It was the same cafe where everything had started. We returned to the exact table near the window. The rain was gone, replaced by warm sunlight pouring through the glass. My brother looked around with a smile that carried weeks of gratitude. He thanked her for treating a stranger's family like her own. Then, with a grin only younger brothers can wear, he admitted that he had secretly believed the two of us were meant to meet all along. Maybe his illness had changed the plan, but perhaps I